welcome to another weekend mix. This week, I'm delighted and absolutely privileged to have in my presence Mr. Micheal English. Micheal, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Damien. It's great to talk to you. Thanks very much for having me.
Not at all, not at all. Micheal, we're in strange times at the moment. How is everything? How are you dealing with it? How are you coping with it?
Well, I suppose, like everybody else, none of us expected any of this. We were on tour at the time that we got the news. We were in Scotland, actually. We had been in Mexico, and we were in Scotland then on tour when we got the news that Ireland was closing down. And we were in the Eden Court Theatre in Inverness, way up in the top of Scotland. And we just finished the sound check, and we had 4 more dates left in Scotland. But I had been watching the news bulletins, and I decided it was time to have a chat with all of the band and all of the crew. So we went into the green room in the theatre, and we sat down around the table, and we decided that it was best to come home. Many of the guys with me have young children and families and that kind of thing. So I had to respect that, and I was in agreement with everybody that we should come home. And we came home that the next day, on the Sunday. I think it was maybe the 15th of March, I think. And I came here to Naas in County Kildare, where I live, and I closed the door that day. And I suppose it's been firmly shut for a number of weeks now. So, it is what it is. We had to come home for everyone's safety, for our safety, and more importantly, for the patron's safety over in Scotland. And we had done maybe 3 or 4 shows in Scotland without meet and greets. We just had the show on the stage, and then we would finish and we would leave. But it was time to come home, and I suppose it was the right decision. Looking back in hindsight, now it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, brilliant. And of course, while you were kind of locked up, for the want of a better word, Micheal, you got together with some of your musical friends and Irish actors and stuff, and of course you come sing with me. You put that piece together, and it was an amazing piece.
Well, thanks very much. Yeah, well, I suppose a lot of us in the music business had been watching the news unfold, and we were watching all of the great volunteers and people who were doing things for the most vulnerable in our society. And while we couldn't do much musically, physically, we couldn't perform, we couldn't give the enjoyment of a performance or all that goes with it. We talked and tried to figure out what we could do. And a lot of the people decided maybe we should sing a song and come together virtually rather than physically. And so a few people approached me and asked me, would I write the song? And I said I would, but I would only write it if we got a large group together, because I think a large group speaks volumes.
It does, definitely.
If you see, if you see one Irish dancer on the stage, you think that's fantastic. And then if you go see Riverdance and you see 25 in a row, you think that is absolutely brilliant. And while one singer is great at any time, I think in these times, it was time for that collective group to come together.
It's very effective. I mean, one of the lines in the song that really, I think one of the very first lines in the song, Micheal, it really drills it home. Like, who would have thought for a moment that there was so many saints among us? Let's have a little listen there now, just for a few seconds, of that song, Come Sing With Me, by Micheal English and his friends.
Come sing with me, with one voice, for those who care and make the choice. Come stand with me, and side by side, we salute them with pride.
Who would have thought for a moment so many saints son or brother, sister and mother, heroes everyone, come sing with me with one voice for those who care and make the choice. Come stand with me and side by side we salute them with pride. They shine a light in the darkness, a light to guard and protect us. We stand united, right beside them, heroes everyone. Come sing with me with one voice for those who care and make the choice. Come stand with me and side by side we salute them with
Well, I sat at the piano, and out of all the songs that I write, sat here in this room, you know, I found it difficult to write it because I wanted to say so many things about all of the great people who are doing so much work to help the most vulnerable, the less fortunate in our society. And so I wanted to say so many things, but of course you only have 3 or 3.5 minutes to say that. And so I wrote down maybe 200 or 300 lines and picked out the best of them, the most effective lines. And I started off by saying, which I think is exactly what we all wanted to say. Who would have thought for a moment so many saints were among us? I mean, who would have thought that people would get up and leave their young children and go to hospitals and put their lives on the line? And that's only one example of a million. And I directed the song, or I wrote the song especially for what I like to call the silent hero, because while there are many heroes throughout this pandemic, there are many other people who sometimes, you know, you'll never see them on the news bulletins. You'll never read about them on the front pages of the newspaper. And while there are other people who deservedly appear on the news bulletins and the newspapers for all the great work that they do, sometimes we forget about the ordinary person who is getting up, the sons, the daughters, the nieces, the nephews, the grandchildren, who are going to help what I like to call the silent hero, the people who are over 70 who had to cocoon for so long, which wasn't easy. I mean, you know, I'm sure in the best of times, you know, we like to get out for a walk even. We like to get out and go to the shop. We like to go to the supermarket. We like to go for a pint. We like to go for our dinner out, or a treat every now and then. And all of these things were extinguished, and people had to just close the door and speak to other people through the window, and including myself, going down to my elderly parents half an hour away. That's what I did. So all of those people who did so much, the great people in the HSE and in the health services, the people who stocked the shelves in the supermarkets, the people who drove the trucks to deliver the food, all of those people are the silent hero. And I wanted to direct the song to those people and not to forget the ordinary person going about their daily lives, as well as helping all of these people. And everybody who contributed in the song had the same opinion. And so that's what we dedicated the song to. And when I wrote the song, I thought, if it helped one person, if it gave a bit of a source of comfort to one person, it would be worthwhile. And in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, we had 700,000 views. We had a message from the president, from the Taoiseach then, Leo Varadkar. And so all of that made it very much worthwhile that people noticed the song. But it was the ordinary person that we dedicated it to. And the fact that 700,000 people sat down and watched the song, if even a tenth of those people got a little bit of comfort from it or a little bit of company from it, because God knows we all need a little bit of company in these testing times. That was the object of the song, and it makes it all worthwhile.
No, I think it was absolutely fantastic, and fair play to you for pinning the words together, and for all your friends as well. I think it was fantastic. You mentioned your parents there. Take me back to the early '80s, growing up in Kildare, Michael. Your dad was an accomplished musician. Your mum an Irish dancer. Your two sisters were musicians. It was little wonder that you were going to go down that road and pick up an instrument or sing a song at some point.
Well, I was born in '79 in Castledermot, in County Kildare, to a great house. And thanks be to God, 41 years later, my parents are still there. My mum has been sick for a long number of years, and anybody who knows me will know that I often speak about that. My dad is a saint. I think that many people think their fathers are great. My father is certainly a great man. He has looked after my mother for a long number of years with the help of a home help, with the help of a nurse who comes in, and with the help of the general community and my two sisters, who are fantastic people as well, and their families. But certainly during the pandemic, it has become very evident how great a man my father is, because we couldn't have the home help, we couldn't have the nurse,
Of course.
And both my sisters, two sisters and their families, and I, we felt like we were walking around with our hands tied behind our back, because we couldn't do anything either. And being so close to them, in proximity as well as everything else, we couldn't do anything. We were here, they were there, only down the road, and we could do nothing. And my father had to do absolutely everything for my mother. And I know he would only want it that way, and that's what makes him a very special person. But growing up, he was like that as well, and so was my mother when she was healthy. They were great people. I grew into a great house, a loving house, a house full of music. We had a session every Saturday night, and we still have that. Well, we haven't had it now through the pandemic, but we had it up until then for the best part of I suppose the best part of 40 years. And local musicians would come to our house, and we would all play music. And that's where it started off. That's where I learned. I learned from the local people and the people from neighboring villages and towns who came to our house for that session. And my two sisters were sent to music classes. One to learn the piano, my older sister Patrina, and Olivia then, the one that's next to me, she was sent to learn the violin. And although they were very excited and wanted to go, my parents would never push us into doing anything. They quickly realized that they didn't like it so much. They didn't like the practicing and the studying and all that went with that. They'd rather be out in the field. And while I love to be in the field as well, I wasn't being sent to music classes, and I was trying to listen to them outside the door, and then I would sneak in and try and play it myself. So I was the one that I suppose had the love for it. And I suppose that stems from both my parents. My father being a musician, a traditional Irish musician, playing the button accordion. My mother never played an instrument. She danced a good bit, danced a few sets and hornpipes and jigs and reels, and so the music was very much in her bones as well. And so it stemmed from them. My mother was just a housewife. My father worked in well, I have to be careful when I say what my father worked at, because down our way they build bodies for trucks, so they called them bodybuilders. But whenever I told anybody my father was a bodybuilder, they thought he was something like that, but a coach builder. So a very ordinary job, I suppose, but a rewarding job. But money was scarce, and they had to scrimp and save to send me. first of all to Hennessy's Music School in Carlow and then to the Royal Academy. It wasn't easy to come up in those times with the funds to do all of that. So they were very supportive and have remained as supportive to this very day. You know, the music business is, I suppose, a peculiar business, a business that is sometimes highs and lows and ups and downs, and it's a very unpredictable business. And I suppose other people would rather, if their sons or daughters were doctors or psychologists or lecturers or whatever, you know, rather than going into the uncertain world of music. But my mother and father were always very supportive of me going into that, and they still are, and my sisters as well. So it was a great house, and still is a great house, even though my mother isn't as well as we'd like her to be. It's still a great house. It's still a house full of music, and hopefully when the social distancing calms down another little bit, we'll be back to the session and get back to all those people going to play on a Saturday night.
Brilliant, brilliant. I can remember speaking to Carl Spain, the Limerick comedian, there a few weeks back, and he said like he remembers telling his parents that he wanted to be a comedian, and they kind of said to him, "Okay, but what are you going to do when you leave school?" You know, it was that. I think our parents kind of had that in their head. What you were saying there, you know, that you're going to be a musician, but what are you going to be when you grow up? Like, what's your job going to be? But
absolutely. Well, you know, but when I left school, the teachers and the chaplain, the priest in the school, and I was taught by the nuns, and some of the nuns, you know, they all contacted my parents and said, what on earth are you doing, letting this fella go off out into the world of show business? No, they were very nice about it, but they were questioning it. And I remember at the time, I was 18, and someone said, you know, the Irish music business and the show band era, it won't be around in 2 or 3 years' time. And people are probably still saying that, but that's about 20 years ago, so it's still going hale and hearty.
But it's amazing. Like, I mean, even take me back to the day you got the phone call or the letter from the Late Late Show. You sat down and you wrote a letter to the Late Late Show. That must have been, what was going on in your head at that time? Can you remember?
Well, I was 11, and Damien, and I was studying and playing all the time, and I thought to myself one night when I went to bed, I was lying awake and I was saying, I remember saying, you know, how can I be like Big Tom or Margot or Foster and Allen or Brian Call or T.R. Dallas or any of the greats? How can I be like them? And I suppose the first thing was to appear on television. So I wrote a letter to Gay Byrne himself, Lord mercy on him, and I sent a cassette with it of a piece of music that I had composed. And I thought it was fantastic. Now, I was 11, but I thought this was a masterpiece. And I remember Mikhail Gorbachev was in the news at the time. And whenever he was making a speech, he would always use the word perestroika. And I remember saying to my father, before I sent off the letter, I said, what does that mean, perestroika? And he said, oh, that's a great word that means peace in their language. And I said, so thought to myself, that's a great title now. I'll really impress them if I call the piece of music I wrote perestroika. So I called it perestroika. I sent it to Gay Byrne. And then I got a call to go up and audition. And I did that. And I had to go again. I had to go 3 times altogether to audition because there's so many people in for it. And then I got the part to appear on the Late Late in December in '91, and. I was 12 then, and the Yamaha, who the instrument I was going to play, Yamaha made it, and they sent over a Yamaha to my house, for me to practice on. And that was like, I don't know what certain people like getting certain things. That was, for me, that was like getting a Lamborghini
Of
or a
course.
Ferrari. And it arrived into the house, and I was down in the sitting room when it arrived, and they came from Danfay in Dublin and installed it into the house. And then our cousin, Geraldine, at 28 years of age, died on the birth of twins in Guy's Hospital in London. So that was just a couple of days after the keyboard arrived. So that kind of took the gloss off things. But then when I appeared on the Late Late then in December 91, a couple of months later, the phone started ringing, and I started to get some gigs here and there, and my mother and father became everything from my roadie to my manager and my driver and everything else that went with it, and they drove me up and down the country. The first spot I got, a lady, Lord mercy on her now, her name was Moira O'Shea from Carlow, and Moira booked me to play in Green Acres in Carlow, which was a very famous ballroom, and I played relief to Dickie Rock in Green Acres. Now I was 12, and at that time I didn't sing. I just played, and I didn't speak either. For about a year, I didn't really know how to introduce the songs or anything. But I got going anyway, and my father eventually, a friend of his had a postal service. And when they retired from the postal service, my father bought the post van, and he cut it in half and made a trailer out of it. And we put the piano in there, and we hitched it on to Daddy's Ford Escort, and we went all around the highways and byways of Kildare, Carlow, Kilkenny, Waterford, Wexford, that kind of area for about 3 or 4 years. And then I branched from that, from a 1-piece to a 2-piece, and then to a 3-piece, and eventually then to the 6-piece, and started on the 17th of February 1998, which was my father and mother's wedding anniversary. And I started in the Regal Lodge in Wexford, and that was the start then of the bigger band.
Wow. And can you remember one of the first songs that you ever sat down and actually wrote yourself?
Yeah, the first song I ever wrote was a song called A Whisper Away. My father's brother, his name is Michael English as well, and he went as Mick. And Mick died in 1998, and 1996. And so I wrote a song. They asked me to sing at his funeral. Of course, he was my uncle, my own namesake.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to do a special job on that. So that was the first song I wrote for my Uncle Mick, was called A Whisper Away. And that was the first one, yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's powerful stuff. And of course, you went on then, you had an interaction with, of course, Henry McMahon, from one of the main founders of the Mainliners, and
Yeah.
and that song, of course, nearest perfect. That was you took control of that song and you made it your own, and it was unbelievable.
Well, yeah, I had been in a 3-piece band. I was 17, and I was also doing a bit of work experience in RTE. And one night after the Late Late Show, actually, I was doing work experience on a Friday night at the Late Late Show. And I used to stay with my aunt in Dunleary, my mother's sister, Chrissy, Lord of mercy on her. And I used to get the bus home on a Friday night, and I missed the bus this particular night. And I was in Dublin. I was 17, and I started to walk back to my aunt's house, and I passed by the Bramer Rooms in Churchtown, which is a very famous ballroom, and I saw thousands of cars there, and I could hear this great country music, and I went up to the door, and the lady let me in, and Big Tom was playing, and I was the youngest there, probably. I was only 17, but when Big Tom finished, I approached the stage very nervously up to Henry, and I got talking to him, and I told him I wanted to be in show business and I wanted to do what they were doing.
Mm.
and I told him I had a three-piece band, and he said he'd write me a song, and that was Friday. And then on the following Tuesday, I received a cassette in the post with a new song that Henry had written called "The Nearest to Perfect," and I.
Oh, I never will forget the first time that we met, when I looked in your two eyes so blue, when I saw you standing there, smiling lips and golden hair. I knew that my dreams had all come true. And when I asked you for a date, and I saw you hesitate, I thought my whole world was tumbling down. But whenever you said yes, I knew I'd found true love at last. For you're the nearest to perfect I found.
I suppose that song helped me then to put the band together, because I sent it to our local radio station in Carlow, CKR, it's KCLR now, but CKR, and they started to play it, and then all of the stations started to contact me for it, and people wanted to play it, and so I started to sell it and address the envelopes at home and send it to people, and then out of the money from that, I was able to buy the better equipment and a van and that kind of stuff to put the bigger band on the road. And that song really was the song that it was the main thing that helped me to get on the road.
It got you on the road, of course. And you know, you mentioned earlier on there, Michael, about people telling you, oh, the Irish country won't be there in a couple of years' time or whatever. But I look from my own point of view now. I've got my youngest daughter, she's 8 years of age, and she's on Spotify the whole time. And she has she could sing 5 or 6 of your songs on Spotify at 8 years of age, you know. And on the other end of the scale, then I've got my dad, who's 70 next year, and of course he's old school. He has all your records, your CDs, all of that, you know. But it's amazing how the music affects different ages.
Yeah, well, I think the music business is like a big wheel, and it keeps turning. And you know, the show band era was phenomenal in the 60s and 70s and into the early 80s. Then the wheel turned slightly, and the nightclub and the disco came in, and although the bands kept playing and they were still successful, the wheel turned and the nightclub came in, and then the wheel turned again about 6 or 7 years ago, and live music started to come back again. And that wheel will keep on turning. That's my motto anyway, and that's what I believe, that, you know, when live music goes down, if it goes down again, it'll turn, and the wheel will keep on turning, and it'll come back. And that's certainly what has happened, I think, all through the history of live music. And about 6 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, that wheel turned, and a lot of young people came into the business. I used to say a lot of young people like myself, but I don't know about that anymore. A lot of young people came into the business, and because they came into the business and they did great work and released great records and brought live music to a whole new generation. I could go to a show tomorrow night if we were playing, and as you said, you could have an 8-year-old and you could have a 7-year-old, and that's the beauty about Irish music, about country music, especially in Ireland, that it appeals to all age groups and families. And certainly, if we were playing now, at the moment, we would be normally doing outdoor festivals in the afternoon, and you would have ages from 9 to 90 there.
Wow, it's absolutely fantastic, because I remember growing up, I'd be the same vintage as yourself, Michael, now, but growing up, I remember my dad used to bring us up to my cousins in Mayo, and growing up in Limerick, there wasn't much of the country scene as such. Well, we didn't see it, maybe there was, but once you cross the border going into Mayo, like it was absolutely mental. We'd go up to my cousin Tony O'Connor, Lord have mercy, you knew Tony, but the
I did.
country music was like bread and butter up there in Mayo and these parts of the country.
Yeah, well, Mayo, I think certainly from Mayo up Donegal and all around the north was always hugely popular. But certainly over the last number of years, it has become widespread. Really, you're down in
Yeah.
Limerick, isn't it?
Limerick, yeah,
And
yeah.
like I remember, I closed the Glentworth Hotel in Limerick City, and I opened it again then as well.
Oh.
That was a Thursday night venue, and that was packed with people on a Thursday night. The Glentworth, the Green Hills, out the Shannon Road, out the Galway Road, the Ennis Road, or whatever that road is.
Yeah.
That was then it moved to the Radisson there, which was called the Limerick Inn at the time.
That's right.
And then the Devon Inn and Temple Glanton. There were lots and lots of venues around Limerick as well. But I think certainly if you drew a line from Dublin across to Galway, from there up it was always hugely popular and still is, but it has trickled everywhere else, thanks be to God.
And when you were growing up then, as you were getting older into your late teens, was Irish country was that the direction you always wanted to take? Because I know you have been...
Well, it was.
You were kind of trained classically as well, like, with your voice and piano. It's a big jump from classical into the Irish country scene.
Yeah, well, I suppose I was learning the Royal Academy, the piano, and I did all the grades and all of that kind of thing. And then I taught for a while as well, and that was enjoyable. But the one thing I noticed when I was studying Royal Academy and classical music, I noticed that the people who I looked up to were fantastic musicians, but there wasn't an awful amount of work. There was for the very elite, if you were lucky enough, and it was luck as well as being talented and being good at what you did. But I saw that there wasn't a huge market for 24/7, 365 days a year. And a lot of the people that I was looking up to were doing performing. They were performing, but they also had a number of other jobs to keep their families going and that kind of thing. Whereas country music, even though I loved the music as well, country music the bands were playing 6 and 7 nights a week, and it was a more sustainable job, I suppose. But it wasn't all about the work. I looked up to people like Big Tom and Margot and Philomena Begley and all of those greats that were out there, Daniel and all of the greats, and I just loved what they did, and it was I thought it was a lovely type of music and a lovely kind of feeling. When you went to their shows, it was like a family. It was a great feeling, and everybody was together, and I never got that feeling from any of the other shows that I would have played or attended, even though I enjoyed them. Certainly the country music was definitely the way I always wanted to go.
But of course, we just touched on it there a second ago. Again, going back to my story about my daughter 8 and my dad nearly 70, that was it opened the umbrella for everyone, basically. That kind of music.
Absolutely. And back then, you see, I was going to see the show bands when I was 8 years of age, because back then you could go into the pubs to see the show bands. And that's one thing, I suppose, that I don't feel is right. For young people who are out there who want to get into the music, it's very hard to go see the bands or anything nowadays. And I agree with the drinking and the licensing laws and all of that thing, but it is hard for them to go and see. Whereas when I was starting out, Mum and Dad brought us to see the show bands 4 nights a week, and that was a great time.
Yeah, I mean, even from my own dad experience, like show bands, he loved the show bands, and he still loves the show bands. He's wall to wall with CDs. I mean, when poor Brendan Byer passed away, my dad went into mourning for about a week.
And so did we all. Yeah, Brendan was a very special guy. Brendan was like Big Tom. And musically they were worlds apart, and that's what made them successful, because if you put on a Big Tom record and you put on a Brendan Boyer record, they were unique in their own style, and that's what made them successful. But as people, they were the same. They were lovely people. Tom was a gentleman. Brendan was a gentleman, certainly, and he's known as a gentleman throughout the business, not only in Waterford, where he comes from, but from all over the world, really. I remember going to Las Vegas one time, and I'd never been in Las Vegas before, and Brendan and his daughter Aisling arranged everything for me because they lived out there. They knew where to stay and where to go and what to see, and he was just a real gentleman, yeah.
Oh, well, when I was doing bits of research there on yourself, Michael, there's an awful lot of people. They're saying you're kind of a cross between Michael Bublé and Daniel O'Donnell. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a compliment, really. You know, I admire both of them, and you know, I suppose Daniel has been a great ambassador for what we do all through the years, and is more successful now than he ever was. Michael Bublé the same. But you know, I think we all have to have our own identity, and that's what makes us. You know, when I mentioned Tom and Brendan, and you could mention 20 bands back then, but they were all different. They appealed to the same people, but largely, but they were all different, and that's what made them unique. And that's why in latter years especially, I write most of my songs and try to create my own sound as well.
Of course, I know, but you've definitely established that. I mean, when you think of our generation of Irish country music, I mean, Michael English, Derek Ryan, Mike Denver, I mean, you're up there with the best of them, like, you know what I mean? And you've done all the hard work yourself, which is fantastic. As you said, you've got a great backstory as to how you got to where you are today. And it's hard work, I suppose, is what's got you there. I want you to tell me about your musical, Who Dares to Dream?
Well, Who Dares to Dream, I suppose, has been a dream of mine all through my life, you know. I've had many things I've wanted to do. Of course, playing in the band was first and foremost, but I've had lots of other things that I wanted to do. And writing a musical was one of those things. It was a hugely daunting task because there aren't many Irish musicals. There are many, I suppose there are many written, but there aren't many that lasted or maybe were as successful as people wanted them to be. And that's no disrespect to those people who wrote all those great musicals, but it didn't work for some reason or other. And so while I always had the intention and the dream to do it, there were a lot of negatives, and it was very daunting thing to take on board. It took me a year to write it. I wrote the music, and Tommy Marin wrote the script, a great playwright from the west of Ireland. And I wrote it for 2 hours every night, because up until all during the time I was writing it, I was playing, I was performing. So I was performing maybe 5 or 6 nights a week. So I wrote it for 2 hours every night when I came in from playing. Because I was in the frame of mind, I was after been playing on stage, and the adrenaline might have been up a bit more than when you get up in the morning. And so I wrote it every night when I came in, and I limited it to 2 hours. And even if I was in what I thought was the greatest song ever, I would still stop at the end of the 2 hours. But I did that for a year. So if I was in Bundoran and I'm home at 6 in the morning, I'd write till 8. If I'm in Limerick and I'm home at 4 in the morning, I would write until 6. And so I did that for a year, and finally, Who Dares to Dream was finished. And I wrote 13 songs, and coupled with 13 songs, then you have to have maybe up on over 40 sequences of music that goes behind dialogue and all of that kind of thing. But anyway, it was all written. We went into rehearsals last October, September, October. We rehearsed until the week before the lockdown. I was in Mexico. I came back, and I had a week before I went to Scotland. I rehearsed that week. The final dress rehearsals were to be that week. And then, of course, the COVID-19 came along, and that put end to that. I was to start on the 3rd of April in Castlebar, and I couldn't believe, none of us could believe the ticket sales. We you know, the Royal Theatre in Castlebar holds 2,000 people, and we put the Friday night on sale, and we had to put a Saturday night on sale, and then we had to put a Sunday night on sale. So we were going to do 3 nights Castlebar, the first 3 nights, We were going then to Sligo, and that ended up going to 2 nights, and so on and so forth. So there was an appetite for it, and people wanted to see it, and it was such a shame that it had to go where it went. But we've put it on the shelf until next March now, and hopefully, please God, this whole thing, this pandemic, will be a lot died down by then, and we look forward to bringing it out then.
Oh, please God, yeah. And I'm hoping to go and see that, catch that somewhere as well on the road. What's it like, Micheal, for you when you're standing on stage and there's a couple of thousand people in front of you and they're singing your song back to you? What's that like? What's inside in your head at the time when that happens to you? And it does happen.
Well, it's a great question. Nobody ever asked me that, and I always have it in my head. And I'm surprised that nobody ever asked me that until now, because when it doesn't matter if you're in a small 500-seater theatre, or if you're in singing in somewhere like Holy Cross on an outdoor afternoon with 12,000 people there. When you play your own songs and you see people singing them back to you, it's a great feeling, because it shows that they're playing that song at home, and they don't sit down and write it out and learn it. They know it because it's familiar, and that means it's getting played. It's a great feeling to see a little child in a football stadium in Holy Cross, or in Ballymore, or in Grange in County Sligo on a Sunday afternoon, singing the words of Loughlin's Bar, Friday at the Dance, or some of those songs. It certainly is a great feeling. It makes you believe that maybe you continue writing the songs that you're writing, because if people are singing them back to you, well, then something is going on right.
But it must make you feel so, I suppose, satisfied is probably just a simplified word, but it makes you feel like you're doing something right, as you said. I mean, like I said now again, going back to my 8-year-old daughter, she's in the back of my car every evening on Spotify, singing out, belting out the tunes, the tune beat or something like that, I'm blaming you for my headache most evenings. She's screaming down the car.
Pádraig Stevens wrote that song, and great songwriter as well. Wrote many songs for the Saw Doctors, Christy Moore, and yeah, I was very lucky to get that. Actually, my drummer Keelan found that song, and whenever we get a song that I don't write, like that one, we like to what we say, respray it a little bit and give it a new treatment, and
make
that's
it your own. No,
yeah.
It was fantastic. No.
Once upon a golden age, singing songs was all the rage. Songs for glory, songs for fun, sad songs in the native tongue. Upon me solemn oath, there'd be 40 verses, note for note. But here's a song to set you free from all of that old history. We got the tune beat goes, sugar, sugar, and the heart speaks. And how's your mother? Got the tune beat goes, shimmy, shammy, and the heart speaks. And how's your mammy? Singing the song, singing the song, singing the same old song. Sham, you're only spoofing. You're huffing and you're puffing and you're blowing the roof in. I've got the electric guitar with the pickup and the tremolo bar. I got the tune beat goes, sugar, sugar, and the heart speaks. And how's your mother? Got the tune beat goes, shimmy, shammy, and the heart speaks. And how's your mammy? Singing the song.
You had the power to go back in time. What advice would you give to a 12-year-old or 11-year-old Micheal English?
Well, I would always say, make sure, if you want to be in the music business, if that's what the child wants to do, make sure and do it. And I would say to any parent out there, if they have a child that wants to be in the music business, it's a fantastic business to be in. Particularly our side of the music business. I don't have an enemy in our business. We're all like a family, and I'm huge friends with each and everybody in our business. Make sure and do it, but maybe have a second string to your bow in case it doesn't work out. I never had a second string, so I always had to get up in the morning. Even if you had 2 hours sleep, you have to get up and go again. And I did that not because I had to. Well, I had to, but I loved it. And I think if you have the love for the music business and you want to do it, do it. But have something else, just in case it doesn't work out.
A good bit of advice. What does the future hold for Michael English? What's next on the? I mean, you've the box tick for the musical. You've albums. You've
Yeah.
singles. What's next?
Well, I think in the immediate time, to get back on the road is paramount. That's number one. But we can't go back until it's right. And I think if we go back too early, it wouldn't be fair on people, asking people to come out, and God knows what would happen with a wave and all that kind of thing. But leaving all of that aside, in an ideal world, get back on the road, get the musical done. I have a new album nearly finished. That will come out, and really just do more and more. I'm very lucky that I have a band of people and a crew who want to work as hard as I want to work. And I don't want to work 7 nights a week because of the financial gain. I want to work 7 nights a week because I love it. We all have to live and we all have to survive, and it's great to get paid. But I love playing every night if I can. And I'm lucky that I have a group of people who are with me. And if I said to them tomorrow we have to go to Hong Kong to play, they'd say, "What time is the plane leaving?" And I'm very thankful for that. And as long as we can play music, and you know, certainly in the last couple of months, you appreciate how lucky we are to be able to do something that we love. And please God, we'll get back to that.
Brilliant. But I think as well, Michael, before I let you go, that's a testament to you as well. Because I've seen you play in a church, I've seen you play in a big venue, and I've seen you play in a hall. And they're smiling what they're doing. They're enjoying what they're doing. And that's because of you as well. Like, so a lot of that is down to you. I mean, it's the person you are, and they can relate to you, which is great.
Well, you know, I enjoy playing at the dances. The atmosphere is electric. And then I also enjoy playing in the church because I love that type of music as well. I love playing in a theatre. I love playing, whether it be in Ireland or England or Spain or Portugal on the holidays that we do, whether it be on the cruise or Mexico or Alaska that we were in last year. You know, every show I enjoy going out to do. And it doesn't matter if there's 1 or 1,000,000 there. I enjoy it the same. And I think that's, if you enjoy what you do, you know, if you look down and some nights you have a 1,000 people, and then the next night you look down, you've only 500 people. Doesn't matter if you enjoy what you do. And I'm lucky that the people surrounding me, everybody in the band and the crew and people in the office as well, Denise and Damien and Paul and everybody who works in the office, it's all like the big wheel I spoke about earlier on. And we're all cogs of that big wheel. And it takes all the people to make it work, not just me and the front man. Whenever I got an award, various award things that I would have to go to, I would always accept it on behalf of the band and the people in the office, because it's that big wheel that keeps turning, and it's those people who are the cogs of the wheel who make it all happen. And although I have to go out and stand in front, you know, if one person on the stage was missing, it wouldn't be right, and that's what makes it work, and that's what makes it tick.
Yeah, and you just touched off the awards there, like you, best country dance band, best international entertainer, best male vocalist of the year a few times, entertainer of the year. I mean, when somebody buys a ticket for Michael English, whether there's 10 people in the audience or there's, as you said, 1,000,000 people in the audience, you're getting the same treatment, which is special. I think it's very special from you guys.
Well, it is. I'm lucky, as I said, without repeating myself, I'm lucky that the people are of the same mindset as myself. Every night we go out, I always treat the show as the last show, you know, because you're only as good as your last show. And I treat every show the same, and we enjoy ourselves. We have a great time on the stage. It doesn't matter where we're playing. And that's because, I suppose, when you're playing 5, 6, 7 nights a week, and sometimes 8 in the summer with afternoon shows and night shows, you know, those people become nearly like your family, your second family. I see more of them than I do my own family. So it's very important that we're all together, we're all on the same page, we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, pardon the pun, and we're all trying to strive to do the best that we can. And that's what makes it all work. It's not just me, it's everybody that's with me.
Michael, I want to thank you very much for taking time out to talk to us here on the Weekend Mix. It's been a great interview. Very, very interesting listening to you and seeing where you came from and where you are today. I want to wish you the very best of luck, and we hope this COVID-19 clears up soon and that you're back on the road quicker than ever.
Thanks, Damien. Thanks for having me, and to everybody there. at the weekend mix, and everybody at Lear Media TV and yourself, and hello to all the relations up in Mayo over on the Belmullet side, and they're great friends of mine. God rest Tony, he was a fantastic man. And thanks, Damien.
Thanks a million, Michael.